Vermintide 2 is dying. I take no pleasure in saying it whatsoever, and really, this isn't anything new. It's been limping along, dragging its necrotic limbs through Uberstrike for months and months now, but I gotta vent. I gotta do it, because I'm frustrated. I think most people who play this game are. And we aren't the only ones. I bet the devs are too. I bet they're tired of the negativity. I bet they're tired of the delays. I bet they just want to make a lot of money and make their fans happy while doing it. Same with everybody else. So none of this is coming from a malevolent place. None of this is personal. This is coming from a frustrated fan and a frustrated content creator that just wants this series to be the best that it can be. But at the same time, we are paying customers. We've invested in this product, in promises that were made and not kept. And so when shit goes south, you're gonna hear about it. It's inevitable. People need to be held accountable when the features a game is sold on don't happen, when they don't come to fruition, when patches hit every branch of the stupid tree on the way down. The only way things are going to change is if we speak up. And so I say this with love. Fat Shark, get your shit together, dudes. Something is wrong with your development process, with your seeming inability to implement anything in a timely manner, to monitor feedback and make minor changes that would drastically improve the game. Changes that people have been asking for years at this point. Everything that goes into Vermintide seems like it takes forever to get done. It's dying for its inability to meet deadlines. It's dying because of its absolutely glacial pace of content additions. It's dying because of design problems and bugs that have been allowed to fester for years. And it's dying because what ended up being a gigantic gamble on a new game mode backfired and wasted about 8 months of precious dev time. And there's more of that coming on the horizon with Versus Mode. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But it sucks, because I want this game to succeed. I want Vermintide and Fat Shark to do as well as possible, for a bunch of different reasons, but the most selfish one is that it directly benefits me when Vermintide is kicking ass. I make content for this game. When people are hype, when the gameplay is great, when the content is rolling in, I have fun playing, I have fun recording, a lot of people watch, and that viewership translates directly to my bottom line. So of course, I'm all for Vermintide doing well. And this game sold more than 2 million copies worldwide. But I don't feel like that success has been capitalized on at all, in the slightest. When it launched, Fat Shark went on record and outright stated they wanted this game to be on a 5 to 10 year plan, on a games as a service model, one that would receive constant love and constant attention and updates for upwards of 5 to 10 years. But here we are, heading into 2020, and I'm not sure it's gonna last 3, despite wildly outstripping projected sales. And I can't help but feel like a big part of that is that there's no clear vision for the game. That Vermintide just kinda drifts along in the breeze at the whims of some unseen shadowy figure who reads cool words like leaderboards and grind and replayability and makes unilateral decisions completely disconnected from reality and from what players actually want. That every edition has elements that are good, that people desire, but it's covered in so much other shit surrounded by utterly baffling decision making and implementation that it all just ends up being a net loss. And I think Weaves are a perfect example of that, and I'll be the first to admit, when I first heard about Weaves, I was hyped. The atmosphere surrounding them sounded like it'd be amazing, and it is. The maps are gorgeous. They are beautiful. They are everything I wanted from a visual perspective. The Athanor and the way you custom build your character on the fly sounded like it'd be amazing, and it is, especially compared to the loot and re-rolling system we have in the base game. And there are a bunch of fantastic ideas, great art direction, and fun gameplay to be had in Winds of Magic. The DLC wasn't some abomination, there's good content there, but it's utterly dead now. You can't find a game even if you wanted to. Why? Because the execution was done so poorly, in so many different facets. 100 different queues for 100 different weaves. Now that is an abomination. How that ever passed QA, I will never know. Lord have mercy, that is just horrible. For the sake of leaderboards and competitiveness, something that nobody cares about in a team-based co-op game where you kill rats with melee, we got weaves that have no random spawns. Random spawns being the major factor that makes running the same map multiple times feel fun and fresh and different every time you do it. And so the replayability, what was sold as the main reason to play Weaves in the first place, never really materialized, to a point where 4 months later, you can't even find lobbies. There are maybe a dozen people playing globally at any given time. I'd go as far as to say that the final implementation of Weaves is decidedly less replayable than the adventure maps themselves, which is just intensely ironic. For the sake of leaderboards and competitiveness, Fat Shark have come out and stated they won't do patches mid-season because it will change the internal balance of weaves. Like, I don't even know what to say about that. So completely out of touch, it's mind-boggling. Nobody cares about leaderboards on Vermintide. No one. The fact they would even consider letting bugs and poor gameplay fester instead of immediately implementing fixes when they're ready completely baffles me. At the end of the day, for better or worse, Winds of Magic failed. There's no other way to put it. And to make things even more frustrating, the elements that were great about it, like the Athanor, which lets you immediately customize a weapon exactly how you see fit, shows zero signs of replacing the rerolling system people have been complaining about since launch day. The fact that you have to sit there and constantly reroll and reroll and reroll until you finally get what you want on your weapon. And sometimes that can take upwards of 15 minutes just to get it on one weapon. Talk about that for the rest of the weapons in the game and the rest of your classes and characters, and your time is not being respected in the slightest. But in its current form, even the Athanor itself is still intensely grindy, requiring dozens of runs just to max out a single weapon or class. And this is without a doubt one of my biggest frustrations with Fat Shark in general. Like, if you took the cable guys from South Park, who rub their nipples every time they get a customer complaint, that is basically what we're dealing with when we're talking about grind on Vermintide 2. The devs seem to be under the mistaken impression that drip-feeding new currencies and new ways to unlock things that are already in the game in this jumbled mess of an economy will somehow keep players coming back. I have 500 hours on the game, most of it played on Legend and Kata, and I still don't have enough reds to forge the weapons I want. I'm still missing the vast majority of hats in the game files. I still don't have access to a lot of the weapons I want. But contrary to what devs might think, that doesn't entice me to want to play more. It makes me not want to play at all, because I know I have to put in ungodly hours on top of the grinding I've already done, and that holds no appeal for me whatsoever. And for many of us, that means the game just gets uninstalled. It has the exact opposite effect. We've made it clear in so many betas, and so often it just goes ignored, or only partially heard. Because credit where it's due, they have lessened the grind in some areas of Vermintide and made some beneficial changes on that front. But then something new comes along, and it just straight up doesn't respect your time again. Pretty common theme over the last 2 years. Without intense backlash, we'd still be in a system for Winds of Magic where the amulet was class specific, meaning you'd have to level it up 15 separate times. Again, how that ever passed QA in the first place blows my mind. So yeah, we got Weaves, something that ate up 8 months of dev time at least, a gap where we pretty much got no content whatsoever for a game mode that no one plays. And now we're getting Versus mode, which again, in a vacuum, with nothing else going wrong, I'd be all for. I think a Versus mode for Vermintide could be great. There's a part of me that's still hyped for it, but it's an addition that will only further divide the already dwindling player base. So we'll eat up more dev time on content that doesn't carry over to the main game in any tangible way, just like Winds of Magic did, and things will become even more challenging to keep this ship afloat when you've got to worry about updating and balancing 3 major game modes, when it's become very clear that maintaining even one is too much of a tall order. I mean, think about how long it took for the Beastmen to get fixed. Silent hordes and 5-frame attacks and hyperdensity just made them a terror for way too long, and now we're expected to believe they can handle balancing and patching for 2 additional game modes? I don't have a lot of faith in that. I hope they can, but I'm not sure it's gonna happen. It's too many fingers in too many pies, and it's grinding the entire development cycle to a standstill. So they have 2 options. They can either go back and continue iterating on what they've created before, but then making sure that most of the main game doesn't really get fixed, or they can ignore the things they created, and that means that all that dev cycle was completely wasted. And then there's the project management side. Now, I don't know their internal processes. I won't pretend to know how they handle things. I can only look at results. But apparently, Loner's Emporium of Wonders, the cosmetics shop that's coming in January or February, was nearing completion before Winds of Magic dropped back in August. They were working on it. Then Winds of Magic became the office baby, and I guess everyone was pulled off to go nurture that. Meanwhile, we've got something the game desperately needed for a long-ass time, a way to target loot we actually want, so close to being completed, and it gets pushed back another, 8 months to work on something that doesn't even carry over to the main game? Why has it taken almost 2 years to add new cosmetics to this game? To add a targetable way to acquire specific loot? Something that was added back in V1. A quests and contracts board that was unanimously considered one of the best additions to the game, even if it was flawed in its own ways. Why has it taken 2 years for an emphasis on Vermintide, which was literally one of the most marketed elements of the game in the run-up to launch day, to finally take hold? In that time, we've gotten 0 new skins. Sorry, color swaps don't count. And just a handful of hats that were already in the game files on launch day. And oh yeah, there's still no way to actually make your hats change color to fit the rest of your outfit. In the year of our Lord 2020. Imagine that. Loner's Emporium of Wonders definitely shows promise, and looks like it's going to be a good thing for the game, but it's too little too late at this point, right? It took almost 2 years. How that happened will forever be a mystery to me. They've come out and said, making a new map takes 9 months. Apparently that's how long the Back to Ubersreich maps took as well, with more than 100 employees. Obviously, not all those employees are working on map design. Obviously, not all of them are working on cosmetics and the visual component of the game. They're split up. They're different teams, just like any developer. But it's crazy to me that something like that, making a new map, can take that long. And clearly, considering the gap we've had between maps, it must be true. And then we get news we might get a single new career by the end of 2020. I mean, one can hope that's them just severely downplaying their ability to make new content. They're underselling what they can do, so they can surprise us with a big update later, but holy god, if that's actually all we have to look forward to in terms of new careers or classes this year, I don't even know what to say. That is so far beneath what I was expecting, what I thought we would get when we first saw Vermintide 2 launch. They're just two completely different worlds. It just feels like a revolving door of old issues spanking us every time we finally roll around to a new update. Patches that take way too long for what we get in them, broken promises like dedicated servers that have officially been killed off now, and poor design decisions that taint otherwise good changes. It hasn't ruined my love for this series. I think that speaks to how well the gameplay actually works, how much fun it actually is. But it has soured it. When you look at where it started 2 years ago and where we are now, it's hard to be impressed with how far we've come. Warhammer 2 is a perfect comparison for games as a service model. Both are 2 years out from launch day, both are Warhammer IPs, one is thriving and continuously injecting the series with new content, iterating and improving on what's come before, and one is stagnating, bleeding player base and simply not doing enough. And if that was the intention from the beginning, if that was communicated all along, maybe that would be okay. I mean, I have 530 hours on the game. I got my money's worth many times over. Vermintide is good. It is, it's a good game, but it could have been great, and its potential has been squandered and wasted in so many different ways that at this point, I've lost count, and that's what really sucks. There's clearly still a community for V2. There are clearly a lot of people who still care about it, who want it to succeed. Even when I post a random gameplay of a new map, got 35,000 people watching, at least. That's a hell of a lot of people. Too often, we forget that actors and directors and game developers are real people too, with real feelings, and it's super easy to be a complete dickhead to them from behind the safety of our own computer screens, to make it some personal vendetta. My problem is with the work that's been done, not the people that work there. They are fine people. I know they have the personnel to make it work, because they've made it work in the past. They've made one of my favorite video game series of all time. That has to count for something, right? Fantastic melee combat, incredibly enjoyable atmosphere, ambiance, and world building just makes for a fun video game. I don't want to see it die. I just feel if things don't change, and fast, it might.